Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribaladhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribaladhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribaladhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribaladhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Perivrajacharya Status Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's Founderacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Gaur Premanande. All glories to their assembled devotees. All glories to their assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading this morning from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 9. Dhruva Maharaj returns home. And as I understand, we're reading verses 42, 43, 44, and 45. This is what I was... It's correct. Oh, okay. Good. That's what I was informed. And actually, there's no purport to verses 42 and 43. 44, there is a one-sentence purport, very short, but 45, there's like a regular, smallish, but regular-sized purport, more or less. So what verse, from those four, what verse is on your sheet? All of them. Wonderful. Okay. Well, all right then, what we'll do, I'll just read 42, 43, and 44, and we'll read 45 together, as usual. So, 42 and 43. Tam drishtvo pavanabhyasha ayantam tarasara tat avaruhyan ripasturnam asadya prema vivala parirebein gajam dorbyam dergot kantamanashvasan vishvaksenangri samsparsha hatashesh aga bandhanam. Translation, I'll just read translation. Upon seeing Dhruva Maharaj approaching the neighboring small forest, King Uttanapad with great haste got down from his chariot. He had been very anxious for a long time to see his son Dhruva, and therefore with great love and affection he went forward to embrace his long-lost boy. Breathing very heavily The king embraced him with both arms. But Dhruva Maharaj was not the same as before. He was completely sanctified by spiritual advancement due to having been touched by the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Verse 44. Atajigram mohur murdni shitar nayana varapi snapayam asa tanayam jato dhamma manorata. Translation: reunion with Dhruva Maharaj fulfilled King Uttanapad's long-cherished desire. And for this reason, he smelled Dhruva's head again and again and bathed him with torrents of very cold tears. And yes, well, it's a 2-sentence purport actually. By nature's way, when a man cries, there may be 2 causes. When one cries in great happiness upon the fulfillment of some desire, the tears coming forth from the eyes are very cold and pleasing, whereas tears in times of distress are very hot. Interesting. And it's also interesting, although Prabhupada here doesn't refer to it, but elsewhere he refers to it, is that King Uttanapad, on embracing, like the initial meeting together, embracing, crying, but he expressed his feelings also by smelling Dhruva's head again and again. And for one who's not familiar with Vedic culture and these types of things, a person might think that that's rather unusual. Smell a person's head. But actually it's a standard type of exchange in Vedic culture, as opposed to kissing. Although kissing happens to some degree, but it's not like a standard type of exchange as it is nowadays in our culture. It's really, smelling the head is not done that I'm aware of. Is it done in Hindu society? I never heard of it, I never observed it. But anyway, in Vedic society, and kissing, the gopis kissed Krishna, Krishna kissed the gopis, that happens. But it's not as regular, common an exchange in Vedic terms as smelling the head. It seems, because, Krishna, the gopis that we read about, it's in the Bhagavatam, it sounds like it may be when the exchange of affection is just more intense. Anyway, actually, I can't really comment on that, except that it does happen there. But smelling the head, we hear about that, particularly with children. Smelling the head is smelling the head of the child. It happens, and we read about it here and there in the Bhagavatam. And, kissing, Krishna does it, so that's fine. But it's a little, anyway, one's saliva, the mouth is generally accepted as the 3rd most dirty part of the body. Yes, anyway, you can figure out what the first two are. The mouth is the third one. And if anyone, if you haven't realized that from your own mouth, or smelling other people's breath sometimes when they come close, these things happen. But if you, I'm not recommending you do, but if you rub one of your fingers, like your middle finger, on your teeth and smell, if you've not had any other experience, that'll be quite convincing. Really. All right. And the other thing is the cold tears as opposed to the warm tears or hot tears. There's actually a fairly famous story, which not so many people know about, of Radha and Krishna in Varshana, and Radha and Krishna in Varshana, and wow, thank you. Did you make that? Anyway, thank you. I don't deserve it. Radha and Krishna, Varshana, in the area, well, they were in the vicinity of what is called More Kutia, where Krishna and then a little later Radha assumed forms of peacocks and danced together. More Kutia, more means peacock. Kutia basically means like a house, a little house, or some place like that. And what happened was that it was the full moon night. Actually, when Krishna is in Vrindavan, generally at night it's the full moon night. So it was the full moon night, and they're meeting together there somewhere on the banks of one of the hills there, or the bank of the hill leading up to Mokutia, and Krishna's trying to think of something nice to say, descriptive about Srimati Radharani, her beauty. And he's thinking and looking and thinking, and then he noticed, it's a full moon. And full moon, of course, full moon generally looks very nice. And so Lord Krishna said, "My dear Srimati Radharani, your face is so beautiful. It's just like the full moon." The full moon. And Srimati Radharani didn't know what to make of that. She looked at the full moon, and what did she see? She saw, devotees and friends, that the full moon had spots on it. Next time there's a full moon, have a look, you'll see. If you haven't, anyway, have a look, you'll see. There's spots on the full moon. And Srimati Radharani thought, he's saying I have a spotty face. Because that's a negative, isn't it? Having a spotty face. It's not good, not nice. So it's like an insult, in other words. So Srimati Radharani entered into the transcendental state called mana, transcendental anger. And she just walked away from Krishna. Of course, we shouldn't think that it's like regular anger, as we may from time to time experience. Something doesn't go our way, we may get upset, we may get angry. So Radha and Krishna sometimes, particularly Radharani, sometimes she becomes angry with Krishna because he teases her and does things like this. And she gets angry and just goes away. But it's all part of the loving exchanges. It's not like our anger, which is all to do with just some personal considerations of enjoyment, basically, of our enjoyment or lack of enjoyment, and we then become angry. So, but with Radharani, it's anger, but it's all part of loving exchange. Little difficult to comprehend due to our having had experiences on the material level, but transcendentally that's actually the case. So Krishna was following her, but she would not stop. They went up to the next hill, which is called Man, or at least on top there, the place is called Man Kutir, the place of Radharani's anger. And there's a famous picture. You might have seen it's around, that Radharani's sitting, looking the other way to some degree. Krishna's on his left side, trying to approach Radharani, but Lalita is in between them. And she takes their hands, and she's just about to bring them together. So what happened was that Lalita, they went up to the other hill there, and Radharani was not agreeing to accept Krishna, apparently, under the circumstances. So Lalita came, and Lalita wanted to understand, are they just joking and having fun, or is Krishna actually upset? Because Krishna was crying, and she caught some of Krishna's tears and found they were hot. Yeah, as described here, as Prabhupada describes. Tears in times of distress are very hot. So the tears were hot, Krishna's tears, and she understood that, Krishna is actually, he's very upset, he's very concerned. It's all transcendental. But anyway, he's very concerned. So therefore, rather than tease him or do something of that sort, which, often happens, she then brought them together. And that picture, among other places, is on the altar, on one side of the altar up there in the temple room in Mankutia. Yes, so that's a little comment about that short purport there for verse 44. Let us now read, as we do normally, verse 45. Abhivandya Pito Padav Ashirbish Chabimantrita Nanama Matarao Shirshna Sat Krita Saj Janagrani Abhivandya Pito Padav Ashirbish Chabimantrita Nanama Matarao Shershna Satkrita Sajjanagrani Abhivandya Pito Padav Ashirbish Chabimantrita Nanama Pitarao Sheshna Satkrita Sajjanagrani Abhivandya Pito Padav Ashirbishchabi mantrita Nanama matarau shershna Satkrita sajjanagrani. Someone else? Shri Radharana Sri Giri Govardhan Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Matajis. Abhivandya, worshipping Pito of his father, Pada, the feet, Ashirbi, with benedictions, Cha, and Abhimantrita, was addressed, Nanama, he bowed, Matara, to his two mothers, Shirshna, with his head, Satkrita, was honored, Satjana, of the nobles, Agrani, foremost. Translation. Then Dhruva Maharaj, the foremost of all nobles, first of all offered his obeisances at the feet of his father, and was honored by his father with various questions. He then bowed his head at the feet of his two mothers. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It may be questioned why Dhruva Maharaj offered his respect not only to his mother, but also to his stepmother, due to whose insults he had to leave home. The answer is that after achieving perfection by self-realization and seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, Dhruva Maharaj was completely freed from all contamination of material desire. Feelings of insult or honor in this material world are never perceived by a devotee. Lord Caitanya therefore says that one has to be humbler than the grass, and he recommends more tolerant than the tree to execute devotional service. Dhruva Maharaj therefore has in this verse been described as Saj Janagrani, the foremost of noble men. The pure devotee is the noblest of all, and he has no feelings of animosity towards anyone. Duality, due to animosity, is a creation of this material world. There is no such thing in the spiritual world, which is the absolute reality. Abhivanya pitu padav ashir bish chabimantrita nanama mataro shershna satkrita sajjanagrani. Then Dhruva Maharaj, the foremost of all nobles, first of all offered his obeisances at the feet of his father, and was honored by his father with various questions. He then bowed his head at the feet of his two mothers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadejatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, so the theme here is essentially the same, very closely related. Actually, it's the same as the theme in the last verse we read. What was it? Verse 41 we read some days ago on Thursday, and which I also had to talk about. We don't want to be repetitive because we had quite a discussion. The whole thing went on for about an hour and a half. So, repetition of a good thing is good, Prabhupada said, but in another sense we don't want to be too repetitive. But anyway, it's very nice. Just like his mother, that was the point in the purport, or in verse 41, and Prabhupada focused on that in the purport, that when Suniti was coming out, when she just started on her way to come out to meet Dhruva, who's a little distance away still, he's still coming through some forest area. So she was taken out in a palanquin, and we did mention the other day on Thursday, that was also like smelling the head for, in this case, for very respectable ladies when they go out into public. This is also a standard Vedic practice. They would not just walk out in front of anyone, but they would go sort of unexposed in a palanquin, but the palanquin would not be open. It would have curtains. And actually Srila Prabhupada makes the point that his mother used to do that. Prabhupada's mother. So, this means what? 120 years ago, it was being done in the respectable families, because Prabhupada's father was a businessman, he wasn't a poor man, and they were a respectable Vaishya family, actually, Vaishya family. And his mother, Prabhupada says, she didn't go out in public, just as is. She would, if she went out, and it was not common that she went out, but she'd go out on a palanquin. In other words, she would not go out shopping to the ShopRite or the Pick and Pay or something like that, which is, a very popular pastime amongst housewives these days. Anyway, so on the way out, though, she stopped and picked up Suruchi, her, who was really the first wife, had been, of the two of them, and picked her up, and then so Suruchi got on the palanquin also, and Uttama, the son of Suruchi, and they all went out on the one palanquin. And there Prabhupada makes the point about how Suniti was not envious. And if you were here last week, Thursday, I think you would remember we had a fairly extensive discussion about envy and non-envy. And the same points here now. Dhruva Maharaj, they've all come out now, they're there with him, and his mother Suniti's there. Of course, he offers his obeisances to his mother, and of course, even first of all to his father, and then to his mother Suniti, but then he offers obeisances at the feet of Suruchi, who, I think we all know the story quite well. She was the one who really disturbed him, along with the father Uttanapad, but then she became sarcastic and offensive, actually, and she said, well, because Dhruva had been kind of pushed away, not allowed to sit on his father's lap. Dhruva had been pushed down and away, and Suruchi said to him, well, maybe in your next life you can be born from my womb, and then you'll be able to sit on the lap of the king. And it's really just not a nice thing to say at all. And particularly to a little child, 5-year-old child, it's really horrible, actually. So that's what she did. She was envious. And then, of course, Dhruva got very angry and ended up going to the forest. Then he met Narada Muni, who instructed him on a program of sadhana he could do to achieve his material goal of getting a big kingdom. But he also sort of slipped in as an expert preacher something very transcendental, which would, along with empowering Dhruva to get a big kingdom, but would make him a devotee, and a pure devotee. And so that's what happened. When he finally met the Lord, and the Lord said, okay, I understand you want a kingdom, so sure, I can do that for you. But then Dhruva said, no. Now I've seen you. I'm not interested in a kingdom at all. And the Lord touched him on the head with his conch shell, and Dhruva came to this state now, what Prabhupada refers to as the perfection of self-realization. And seeing the Lord face to face. So in his own way, Dhruva was on the highest level of pure Krishna consciousness. He's now an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Suniti, of course, well, she is also on some sort of level of that sort, because she was free from envy, as the other verse the other day said. She didn't just tell, Suruchi, go get your own palanquin or something like that. She just accepted her and her son. So that was a display of her pure-heartedness and freedom from envy. And now Dhruva, of course, for Suniti, whether it's a manifestation of her pure Krishna consciousness, that's not exactly stated directly, although, she's certainly a devotee. But in the case of Dhruva, Prabhupada's making it very clear that Dhruva was completely freed from all contamination of material desire. And when a person becomes completely freed from all contamination of material desire, then it manifests. There's so many other symptoms. It's not just free from desire, but it's free from envy also. Free from desire, free from envy, free from pride, free from hatred, free from covetousness, greed, and so on and so forth. Basically free from all materialistic types of consciousness, of attitudes. Yes, and that becomes very prominent in the devotee's activities. And so therefore one can see, if one understands that principle, then one can see, actually, here we have very, very advanced devotee or pure devotee, free from these things, if the devotee is displaying those symptoms under those different circumstances. So Dhruva is, in that he now goes and offers his obeisances at the feet of his mother, Suniti, and the stepmother, Suruchi, who had insulted him in such a horrible way. It's really such a horrible thing to say to a little child, innocent and very sensitive, usually, little child. So, Srila Prabhupada here, he quotes, he refers to, and sort of paraphrases Shikshastakam verse 3, one of the most famous verses amongst all of the different verses which we often use and encounter. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. That because Dhruva Maharaj was in this state of pure Krishna consciousness, self-realized, fully in Krishna consciousness, therefore he was just naturally, very spontaneously, without having to think, how should I act here? What should I do? What would be appropriate? He's just immediately, naturally, extremely humble. Srila Prabhupada, in talking about this verse, Trinadapi Sunichena, Prabhupada on a number of occasions elaborates a little bit and says, the example is the tree, Tarora pi sahishnuna, the tree. Someone may be cutting down the tree, the very tree. But while the person is cutting the tree down, the tree is giving shade. Here, take shade, so you can cut more comfortably. And the tree may give fruit. That here, take some fruit, so you'll have more strength to cut me down. This is really, isn't it? At least Prabhupada explains it like that. And for that matter, just a few days ago I was reading the 3rd canto, and it was probably around chapter 30. And Prabhupada made some really extraordinary points in one of the purports there. It was really quite something. Prabhupada made the point, among other really striking points, Prabhupada made the point that trees have consciousness. And Prabhupada said, you can see that because oftentimes when a tree meets an obstacle, it changes direction and turns around the obstacle. Yeah. And you can see also, Prabhupada hasn't mentioned it, but it appears to be a similar sort of thing. Sunflowers, up like in areas where they grow sunflowers, then sometimes you see these big sunflowers, and you see how they, if you drive past them in the morning, the sun is down here, they're facing the sun that way. You drive past again in the afternoon, the sun is in the west, and the sunflowers are now facing that way. Prabhupada attributes it to consciousness and not just some sort of, automatic motor function like that. It's interesting. So, the devotee should be like that. More tolerant, lower than the straw in the street. There, Prabhupada talking about that, Prabhupada says that the straw of course means grass, it's grass. But all the sort of vitality or you could say the food value has gone out of it and it's just dried out. So it hasn't got food value, and so none of the animals are going to be very interested in it, unless of course what they do sometimes, they put molasses on straw and then the cows eat the straw, but actually it's just the molasses that they're interested in. So straw, what's straw? It's useless. So it can be just thrown in the street and just, who cares? And then people just walk on it. And actually Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his, as I recall, his purport to the 3rd verse of Shikshastakam, he did a commentary on Shikshastakam. He says there that the straw is very humble. It just accepts being trodden on. And the straw is not thinking that, why are you treading on me? If it was us, and people were treading on us, we would definitely, generally, think about it. But the straw just lies there and accepts it. That's very humble, lower, feeling oneself lower than the straw in the street. So Dhruva Maharaj, the thing is that to be in this consciousness, Trinadapi Sunichina consciousness, it is just a natural part of being a pure devotee like Dhruva Maharaj. That it's automatically there. It's just one of the symptoms. Along with not being lusty for material enjoyment and the other things like that. So being extremely humble is just a natural characteristic of a very pure, great devotee. And we see also Srila Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Instruction, he makes the point when talking about the 3 levels of devotees, Kanishta, Madhyam and Uttama Adhikaris. He talks about Kanishta, Madhyam in terms of offering respect to them in one way or another. But then when he talks about the Uttama Adhikari, he says that we should serve the topmost devotee who is completely free from the tendency to criticize others. Here, of course, the non-enviousness of Dhruva is being focused on. He offered his obeisances to this woman who insulted him and hurt him because he understood it. It wasn't just, a silly little child and you can say almost anything to them and they just smile. But he understood. He understood. She has insulted me. And he felt it so strongly. Yes. So, but now he's bowing down to her. So in other words, Dhruva has changed. Dhruva's consciousness, Dhruva's nature, his personality, his character, he has changed. And he's become a much better person than he was. Not that he was really like a bad person, but he was definitely, his pride got really agitated and he got disturbed extremely on the basis of pride. But now, no. If he was still proud and Suruchi came up to him, he could have just turned his back on her and ignored her. I remember reading in some news thing many years ago, many years ago, there was a gathering of so-called super-duper high society, and at the time Prince Charles of England was there. And also there was, what's his name from Uganda, who chased all the Indian people out? Idi Amin was there. So Idi Amin came up to shake hands with Prince Charles. Prince Charles turned his back and wouldn't shake hands with him. Anyway, Prince Charles, what can we say? But that was interesting. So Dhruva if Dhruva was in that sort of mentality, like he had been, if he was in the same mentality, he might have not just turned his back on her, he might have said something and insulted her back. Respond to an offense with a good offense. But he didn't do it. He bowed down to her. So he's changed. He's really, really changed. And Srila Prabhupada says, therefore, Dhruva Maharaj has, in this verse, been described as Saj Janagrani, the foremost of noble men. Actually, he's still a boy, but anyway, the foremost of noble men. The pure devotee is the noblest of all and has no feelings of animosity towards anyone. Yes, those types of dualities, they're only there on the material level. There's one class of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswatis in which he is asked, in the questions session, he's asked, do you know the secret how to become Krishna conscious? Do you know the secret how to do it? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, the description says, he leant forward like, I'm going to say something really special and confidential. And he said, yes, I know the secret how to become Krishna conscious. And then he said, Trinada pi sunichena, tarora pi sahishnuna, amanina manadena, kirtaniya sadahari. That's the secret. That's the secret. Certainly it's one of the great secrets, and it's not exactly a secret amongst the devotees, but it's such an important thing, such an extremely important thing. Without humility, how are we going to be accepted by Krishna if we still think, at least from the past, that yes, I am cool, I'm a good guy. The people who don't recognize me as such, it's just because they're stupid, but actually I'm cool. Then that's sort of the foundational qualification for being here in this material world. Certainly one of them, that we somehow or other we become stimulated to become proud, and it manifests in different very specific ways. Particularly, if you read Bhagavatam regularly, you'll see how many times does Srila Prabhupada say, we are in the material world because we want to lord it over the world and the people in it. How many times? It's just maybe not every page, but it's certainly every several or few pages. It's really prime qualification. Lord it over. I am the best. So I lord it over the world and try and just use the world and exploit the world without respecting the world, and lord it over other people. In England, back in the old days, in the rich like the so-called noble families, usually the children were, they're very wealthy people, and usually the children are spoiled brats, or were spoiled brats. Oh yeah. And it's really driven home in their minds that we are the nobility. Yes, so when the spoilt brat, child of, the Earl of this or the Duke of that sort of person, when the spoiled brat did some nonsense, they had a special occupation. That was, they kept a boy, a child, and his job was, he was the whipping boy. It was an official job title and was common in all the wealthy families, that when one of the young children of the family did some nonsense and needed to be punished, they would call out the whipping boy, and in front of the child who did the nonsense, they'd whip the whipping boy, who hadn't done anything. No, really, it's a fact. And so the punishment for the naughty boy was just to see, look, see, he's getting whipped because of you. It was a sort of a strategy to stop the boy being naughty. But I don't think it worked well, because they're just such a bunch of rotten people. Anyway, so, a related point. A related point is that, particularly in the Krishna book, and it's in the Bhagavatam too, in the story of the rasa dance, Krishna left the rasa dance and took Radharani with him. And then just very shortly afterwards, he left her too. And the explanation, why would Krishna do such a thing? The explanation is they became proud. Even Radharani, supposedly, or in some way or another. Prabhupada talks about it though. They became proud. And therefore Krishna, in order to cure their pride, he left them, so that suddenly they realized, we did something wrong, and we have to do better. We must not be proud with Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada explains, either there or elsewhere, in reference to that pastime, Prabhupada explains that Krishna, with his devotees, he can tolerate practically any fault, because his devotees are his devotees, and they're trying to be devotees or to become devotees, and trying to please him and keep out of Maya and so on. And Prabhupada makes the point that in that sense, Krishna can tolerate practically any fault on the part of the devotee, because he knows this devotee is trying but has shortcomings, and they come out every now and then. So he's prepared to tolerate. But Prabhupada says he can tolerate practically any fault, but he cannot tolerate pride. He doesn't tolerate pride in his devotees. And Prabhupada says that if the devotee becomes proud, actually it may be even in a verse somewhere, but anyway, it's there in Prabhupada's books, that if a devotee becomes proud, Krishna changes his attitude towards the devotee and, does something to straighten the devotee out. Yeah. Basically means what they call sometimes tough love. Smash the devotee down a bit so the devotee gets the idea. So anyway, Dhruva, it's not exactly a matter of pride, although it's connected. Due to his pride earlier, he got so angry. How could they treat me like that? I'm going to show them who is important around here. I will get a bigger kingdom than not just my father, but even his father, whose kingdom is the whole universe. I'll get a bigger kingdom. Then they'll understand who's who around here, and then they won't treat me like that. So, it's pride, responding to the enviousness of his stepmother. But Dhruva, as Prabhupada says, at this point now, he's completely freed from all contamination. And it's manifesting first and foremost here. He's bowing down, not just to his father, and not just to his mother, but to his stepmother, who offended him. At least he felt he offended her very grievously. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any comment or question, Maharaj? Comment, question, correction, chastisement.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Very wonderful explanation. Dhruva, having got the mercy of the Lord, having been touched by the counsel, he was completely purified. And that made him forgetting in what was feeling about his stepmother and brother Uttama. Now paid obeisance to my stepmother also. That's why he said, Sajjanagra. He learned all the good qualities of the Sajjana, is a good person. That happens when we are in fully Krishna consciousness, as Maharaj was explaining also. The Trunada Pisinichena, that becomes a prime factor for the Krishna conscious devotees. And all those qualities of the Krishna consciousness we can see in Dhruva Maharaj's life pastimes also. Wonderful explanation.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Sachinandan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj, for that very enlightening class. In later verses in the same thing, Prabhupada described Dhruva as a Vaishnava. And he mentioned that Surichi, because of her harsh and piercing words, she had committed gross aparad.
Right.
Yeah. But Dhruva, we see his offering is typical of a Vaishnava that, like Lord Kapila mentions the symptoms of his sadhu, Titikshapa, Karunika, Surida, Sarvadehinam.
Right.
He has no enemies also.
Right.
So, then also, I was thinking of the Pandavas after, like Dhritarashtra, he had overlooked all the atrocities that were against the Pandavas. Still, after the war, the Pandavas took him
right
to the home, and they treated him as if nothing had happened. There was the big uncle, and they were hand and mouth serving him very nicely, till Vidura comes and clinically.
Right. They let him sit on the throne, and they addressed him as king.
Yes.
Yes, right. That's nice. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
I remember reading that the pride of the disciple is the instruction of the spiritual master. So obviously it's a different type of pride. And what is the symptom of feeling that pride instead of the usual?
Well, yeah, Prabhupada talks about it in relation to Krishna. Specifically, I recall offhand. The pride of a devotee, at least in regards to Krishna, is that the devotee thinks, I have the best master. Krishna. Yeah, no one's got a master like me. In regard to your spiritual master, well, it's pride. It must be something along those lines, but it may be like more of a shared sense of pride. Not like, I've got the best spiritual master, better than your spiritual master, ha ha ha. That sort of thing. That's really a bit twisted. But anyway, in and of the relationship itself, the disciple should feel that my spiritual master is perfect, and therefore he's giving me perfect things, instructions, and I'm just so fortunate. He's so great that I bow down whenever I see him. And that's pretty great if you bow down anytime. I mean, unless you're doing it like a robot or something like that. If you're actually doing it from the heart, it means, you're really accepting the spiritual master as being very, very great. And part of that is a type of pride. Yeah, I would say it's more sort of in the, not exactly isolated, but in the context of being the disciple of the particular spiritual master, and not like drawing comparison like that. Yeah. Would you believe Harikesh Prabhu, when he was Harikesh Maharaj, actually it was just early 1978, and he had just come back from the Mayapur meetings when the first disciples of Prabhupada to become gurus, when it had become established, because in the few months from November through to whatever, like March or something like that, it wasn't entirely clear how's it going to work, or what is the situation actually. But then at Mayapur it became clear. And so he was in Germany, that part of Europe, but he came back from India via England, and I was there. And I took him for a few days driving around England, and we did preaching programs, like 4 or 5 days. And he told me that when he had been here in South Africa with Prabhupada, that Prabhupada had never talked about it that he knew of, but he just started getting into this thing. He would just offer obeisances whenever he saw Prabhupada. And oftentimes he was coming into the room and going out of the room, and like 1 minute later coming back in the room, and 1 minute later going out, and another minute later coming in. And every time he's offering obeisances, like repeatedly, many, many times, dozens of times, in the course of a few hours. And Prabhupada said to him, after some time, Prabhupada said to him, some devotees are first class, but you are Dandavat's class. He told me that. Yeah. It has stuck in my mind. He told me a few things, but anyway, yeah, you are Dandavat's class. I mean, at that point, he was a very good devotee in his time, actually. And another little story I could tell you, which was told to me by a senior godbrother of mine, is that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, I don't know where he got it from, but anyway, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was once doing a tour, a preaching tour of India by train, going around sort of city to city. And one night, he's doing hall programs, like every day or every couple of days or so, doing hall programs. So one night, he asks for questions, and this one man gets up, and the actual question I don't know, but ask some sort of envious question. You know, why do you do this? Some sort of aggressive type of question, personal. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta responded a bit. And then the program finished. The next night, or whenever, a couple of days later, whatever it was, in the next town, whole program, the same man was there. And again he asked another nasty question. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, you know, he dealt with it. And then the next program, and then the next, and the next. He was following him. Yeah. And after, you know, however many, several nights, the devotees said to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, do you think, should we just call the mafia and do something? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, no, don't worry, he'll go away. The next day, or the next program, the man was not there. And the devotees found out he had had a heart attack and died. This is what I was told, definitely. I think it was in a class in Mayapur, actually. It was in a class in Mayapur during the meetings in the festival. And so the devotees told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that, this man, guess what? He's dead. You know, great. Shall we have a celebration? And then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta started crying. And the devotees asked him, you know, what's wrong? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, he was trying to help me. He was trying to help me. He was actually my friend. I mean, not actually like someone he knew in a friendly way from before or something like that, but he was my friend. He was trying to help me. And then he quoted what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, he who criticizes me is my friend, and he who flatters me is my enemy. Yeah. Anyway, I guess it's off the subject, but Hare Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol.
Yes,
Oops. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yesterday, one of the very important point was raised during the class by Bhakti Bhagavan Maharaj, that peace is so important. One has to find peace within himself or herself.
Okay.
And then even with chanting without being peaceful, it becomes more routine or more mechanical. And then now, better than that, in most instances, even in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, you realize that he was also motivated by politics.
By?
Politics.
Oh, okay.
So how can we separate politics from religion, or are they always...
Politics from what?
Religion. Can we... is it
I don't
possible
get
that
it.
can
Politics, what was the word?
be... From religion.
Oh, religion. Well, I mean, that could be the subject of a seminar, but just trying to catch your attention. You know, I think it's a fair suggestion. Chant Hare Krishna. That's what happened to Dhruva. He got out of politics. Yeah. But it's only, you know, the thing is, as one has more experience in Krishna consciousness over a period of time, in the association, particularly in the association of more advanced devotees, then it becomes clear that to become free from these negative tendencies, which are so incredibly prominent in politics. I mean, the enviousness in politics is completely just unbelievable. It's almost superhuman. A superhuman level of envy. It's amazing. But it becomes more clear the more you're in Krishna consciousness, and particularly associated with more senior devotees who are more advanced in Krishna consciousness. And again, it's something Prabhupada says just countless times, particularly in his writings. It's only possible by the development of Krishna consciousness, which means the cleansing of the heart, which removes envy, etc., pride, intolerance, all these things. Otherwise, if someone like a politician exhibits some nice quality somehow, then usually it's more just circumstantial. Like, I'll give you an example. Mr. Who was it? I guess, was it Obama? But somebody, an American president, meets the leader of Russia. And when they come together, just meet each other, they're both smiling and shake each other's hands like, we're friends. It's just circumstantial because they're not friends. If they got a chance, they'd love to kill each other. They would just really love to. So, but it's just circumstantial means, that, it's best politically that I do like this. So therefore I do it. Big smile, shake hand. Yeah, so, some people, I had an experience with Nelson Mandela sitting right there. He had offered obeisances to Prabhupada and had the thing they put on his head. Then we came and sat here. I was showing him around. And the first thing he said, he kind of leaned forward to me. I had told him how, Prabhupada spread it all over the world. He leaned forward and he said, how did he do it? In that sort of voice. How did he do it? And I got the feeling he wasn't just being, intelligent, doing the right thing that would make me think, oh, he's nice. It really struck me that it may be more that he's somewhat in the mode of goodness. Yeah. And I explained how Prabhupada did it. And how Prabhupada said his spiritual master was with him all the time. So he said, I'm never alone. And Nelson Mandela seemed, to actually be taking it in. Now maybe I'm just too innocent and too ready to accept people as being nice when they're not. But, yeah, anyway, interesting experience. When people are more in the mode of goodness, then they start naturally, without having to act and think about it, but they just naturally, they become nicer. But to become like Dhruva Maharaj, you got to be very advanced in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, your mind won't let you. The conditioned mind, what's left of it, it won't let you be nice. You'll be forced to not be nice by your mind. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.